time to start the meeting. I'll call it to order. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
We'll do the roll call, please.
Steingraber?
Yep.
Keo?
Yep.
Hanker?
Yes.
Meek is excused?
Yep.
And Myers?
Yes, here. We move into the public comment period, correspondence. Anybody have anything to add to the mix? Okay, we'll move on to, did I see if this was gonna?
Yep, he's okay, he's here.
Okay, introduction of firefighter critical care paramedic Sam Giebert. Chief?
Yeah, I'll have Sam stand up over here. So Sam started with us on November 21st at 22. He's assigned to red shift as a recruit firefighter paramedic. Sam was another medic that conducted ride-alongs here with us several years ago. And I'm happy to say that we were just his department of choice, especially seeing who waited several months after being interviewed. Stayed at Gold Cross, and we had that delay in the hiring process last year. But Sam stuck around, stuck on the list. He could have went to several departments that were hiring, so he chose to come here, and I'm really happy to see that. Sam comes to us with a lot of firefighter medic experience, serving at Riverside Fire District since 2015 and as a paramedic with Gold Cross Ambulance Service in Appleton since 2020. So with that, please help me in welcoming recruit firefighter Giebert to the Marshfield Fire and Rescue Department family.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. No worries.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks, Sam.
Yep, thank you.
Item number 5, we've got the successful completion of probation.
Yeah, so Alexis Strawn completed probation on December 13th of 2021. She's worked diligently with her FTOs over the past year and has completed all of her tasks, so she is successful in probation. Alexis, a little bit on her, she's highly compassionate and a very skilled medic. She is a shining light of positivity within this department, and we're really happy to have her here. One thing about her is she brings 100% effort and a very good attitude into work every day. I don't think I ever see her not smiling, which is a great fit for our department family. So we're just happy to have her and want to congratulate her on her completion of her probation. So I'd like to let you guys know that that was done.
Thank you.
You bet.
Congratulate her for the commission.
That was good.
I need a motion to recognize this probation period involves a raise. So,
Motion, I'll make the motion, whatever you want.
I'll second it.
motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Steingraber?
Yes.
Keo?
Yes.
Hanker?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes. Next item is the approval of minutes from the December 15th regular meeting.
Move approval.
A motion. Second.
Second.
Bill. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Fire service and law enforcement updates. Bill?
Okay, a number of items and also a few items came in later. I've been presenting a number of examples of citizens aiding the police. One example I have here is from Torrance, California. As we've seen in California and other places, hoodie-clad subjects are entering shopping malls and so forth, doing smash and grabs. We had a case in Torrance, California, where 4 apparently less aware hoodlums did a smash and grab at a store right next to a U.S. Marine Corps recruiting station. And two of the recruiters, as well as some citizens in the mall, ran right away and subdued the gentleman. From the pictures that I saw, two of the subjects that, let's say, were more than adequately restrained. This is from Charge Fleet News. According to a news item there, the F-150 Lightning EV is going to have a substantial price increase for the next year. This goes from a 2021 price of just short of $40,000 up to one that is going to be just short of $56,000. Some of you may be aware that NYPD had a fire in one of their evidence storage buildings. This contained vehicles that were part of crimes, confiscated electric scooters and electric bicycles, and as well as 20 to 30 years of various evidence, including evidence about violent crimes. And that building was destroyed by fire. The initial reports were that the lithium batteries and the confiscated scooters and bikes was the cause of the fire. Now, what was interesting is that the warehouse is located in Brooklyn. It's along the waterfront. And when the firefighters first tried to make entry, they were driven back by the heat and the falling flames. So they brought fireboats in. And just to give you an idea of what water power these guys were putting in, Marine One, which is a first line fireboat, it can pump 50,000 gallons a minute with all the cannons and water towers working. Firefighter or Fireboat Bravest, which is the high-speed boat in their fleet, has a capacity of 6,000 gallons per minute. And as a comparison from what was in the past, the fireboat Thomas Willard, I mentioned that because that was my grandfather's fireboat, could pump 9,000 gallons per minute, and that was back in 1908 to 1959. Huge amount of water coming from these things.
Put that in comparison, our aerial truck has the largest pump on it, that's 2,000 gallons.
2,000 gallons per minute.
You can get a fireboat.
Yeah,
Can you get a river anywhere you want?
we can.
Or on a trailer.
The other one, this is, I put this in because it's really unusual. Burlington, Vermont is the home of Bernie Sanders, who has not been, shall we say, pro-police. Burlington defunded their police. They cut down their staff to the point where right now they have 61, as the time this article was printed, they had 61 officers. Prior to that, they had 100. And currently, because of injuries and military service, they're only operating with 53. And the obvious effect is crime went up. Next item, San Diego, California. A Drug Enforcement Administration strike force hit a drug lab, required 2 hazmat teams, and they found the laboratory was manufacturing EMT. I haven't heard of this one yet. The reference here is that it's due to the San Diego area. It is a Class 1 controlled substance, and it is in the hallucinogenic family. Another one, this is more related, this has relation to both fire, emergency management, and police. This comes from Lead, South Dakota. Lead Deadwood High School. And what you have to recognize is Lead, South Dakota is gold mining country. And in gold mining, you have to use certain types of chemicals. A young man brought to school 3 bottles of mercury, and mercury is used in gold refining. And as the report indicated, an unknown amount of elemental mercury from 3 bottles had spilled initially in his bedroom. He brought the stuff to school and contaminated various areas of the school. The cleanup for this gets to be rather extensive. They called in the Environmental Protection Agency, others use commercial resources, but this stuff is difficult to clean up. To give you an example, this is a 250 milliliter bottle. If he had 3 bottles this size, I never mentioned the size of the bottle. I mean, he could have had small bottles, he could have had large bottles. If he had 250 milliliters, this weighs 3.4 kilos, which is coming out to be just over 7.5 pounds. So I really wonder, it's not convenient to carry into a school setting. But the cleanup gets to be extremely extensive. And one of the things that this brought to mind was that when you're looking at potential law enforcement or fire department responses to a school, which aren't that frequent regarding chemicals. But when you go into a school, does anybody have any idea what's been stored, how much has been stored? So if there's a theft, how much was removed? Solids, liquids, is their storage area secured? Do they have an inventory that you can reference, or is it out of date, or you can't find it someplace? Do they have up-to-date chemical safety data sheets? If they have a spill, what do they have, the control spills? Several years ago, I analyzed a survey for an agency in another county. I analyzed the survey they had sent out, looking at chemical safety in schools. One of the questions was, what type of materials do you have for spill control? The most frequent answer was paper towels. And having been in those facilities for 40 years, I can assure you paper towels don't work all the time. But just some things to consider. Another one to consider is, if you're in that situation, whether it's a theft, vandalism, who's in control of the incident? Is it a science teacher who knows what's there or should know what's there? Or is it the principal who may not know anything about the chemical setting? Too many times I've done 14 situations where I've been involved either with remediation, 2 cases in decommissioning labs. These are private schools that ran out of money, and then providing some analysis in other settings. And too often I ran across the principal or other administrators saying, well, we don't know what's down there, we leave that to the science teacher. But yet, who takes command if there's a theft? Who takes command if there's some sort of incident? It's the principal, which may not be the best thing to have happen. Next item. Michigan State Police has now published their 2023 Model Year Vehicle Evaluation Program. On the second page of that, you'll see the vehicles they tested. They only tested 2 sedans, those the Dodge Chargers. And I provided all the rest of those were trucks. I'll leave the Mustang Mach-E as a separate entity. And I provided top speeds, acceleration times. The other material gets rather extensive. It goes out to close to 100 pages. What you'll notice in terms of top speed, Not that we need 148 miles an hour in town. But the Ford Police Interceptor utility with their EcoBoost engine hit a top speed of 148. The two Dodge Chargers went up at 140. If you're looking at 0 to 60 acceleration times, the Ford Mach-E went 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. Then this goes into some tabular comparisons so you can see what they are, 0 to 20, 0 to 30, and so forth. These are some late items that didn't get printed. Another citizen aiding a police officer. This occurred on December 29th in Springfield, Massachusetts. An officer was attempting an arrest, and the subject did a gun grab on the officer. And they were wrestling for the gun. Citizen saw what was going on, bailed out of his pickup truck, went to aid the officer, and shortly after, backup arrived, and it took three of them to subdue the guy. In the meantime, 2 shots were fired. One hit the subject in the hand, and the other hit the citizen's pickup truck, but they got the guy subdued. This occurred in northern Connecticut. Again, this was at the end of December. There was a crash scene on I-91, and a motorist hit a fire truck. Took out the left side, driver's side of the fire truck. She was cited for failure to slow down and move away from the collision scene. Connecticut has a move away law. So if you approach the scene, you have to move away. She drove right into the scene. And since 2019, throughout the entire emergency services, 220 responders, police, fire, paramedics, have died as the result of motorist first responder crashes. Another late item, this is from Milwaukee. On January 4th, there was a fire, structure fire. From the pictures, it appeared to be a residence associated with a commercial building. After the fire was put out, they found the victim. The fire department could not make adequate entry to the building because it was a hoarder structure, and they could not get through the maze. And that was a 70-year-old gentleman. And then this came up last night. My wife pointed this out to me. Eau Claire and Altoona are looking at starting conversations about potentially merging their fire departments. And the chief in Altoona said, the number of calls for service has increased. Last year they were doing 1,234 calls, which is double what it was in 2013. And between volume of calls and cost of equipment, they're looking at consolidation to provide better service. And Altoona currently has the chief, 4 full-time and 40 volunteers. And then the last item I have for you, this goes back to the Uvalde incident. 3 news outlets, a nonpartisan outlet in Texas, a Texas newspaper, and the Washington Post did a study of emergency medical response at Uvalde. And what they found was that EMS was basically excluded from incident command. That hampered the response of EMS units. They found that there were 2 ambulance units within close proximity to the school building, but others were told to stage as far as 3 miles from the scene. So they had difficulty getting units to the school, and this included units with trauma supplies. And one of the problems they had is that when the police responded, they provided no corridors for other apparatus to get there. So the entry of EMS was blocked by police cars. And the two that were there, they had difficulty exiting because they were blocked by police cars. And as Chief noted to me earlier in some conversation, there were students being transported in police vehicles, just put in the vehicles and away they went to the hospital. The important part, though, is being excluded from the incident command system. And that's all that I have for you.
Any questions? Thanks, Bill. We have a guest this morning, County Manager Jordan Unger. You're up.
Alrighty, hi everybody. It's the yearly time for us to tell you what is being written off. I believe this is either municipal ordinance or some related legal obligation that I have to come here and tell you what is being written off. Most of this is contractual obligation that we have already signed multiple years ago. So really LifeQuest creates the write-offs every time based on what criteria we have given them per contract. And plus our added allowance that was spoken to you, I think back in either November or December. So this is just a good wrap up on here's what we had for 2022 and here's what's in our ledger. As of today, it is $953,929. Now it seems high. Again, remember some of the rule what we talked about relating to the allowance was back in our previous meeting. To speak to the numbers, you can turn to Exhibit A as far as what the reason for the write-offs were. Primarily, it was deceased not collectible and out of statutory. Now, out of statutory was the reason why we created the allowance. If you went back to 2021, we had about we had $15,000 worth of bad debt write-offs. Now, if you just don't look at the bottom number of 889 and just look at the top three numbers, that out of statutory number is starting to grow. And so this is the reason for why we created that allowance in the first place. It's starting now and it will continue later. But because we have that allowance, this basically takes that place of that number growing. So we are now estimating for it. So we will not be caught off guard next year when it rises to say 90 or rises to 150. We have that amount built in. So this is just a reminder of how we account for it, why we do it, and also a reference to you how much is going out the door. Any questions? Oh, as I should note, this also follows with a resolution that needs to be put forth to finance budget personnel, which I can also, or we can move forward and recommend to the council. And that is resolution 2023-04.
Where is that?
I'm sorry, I did not include it, but I do have this document. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's ready. It's dated for the date of the Finance and Budget Personnel Committee.
You should see that before.
I like this.
Everett's gonna make copies.
Appreciate the input there. It gets back to where 5 years ago, this would have been nice to have.
Yeah. I hear you.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
But we would have saved ourselves a big headache if we'd have gotten this along the way. So, and up to that point where it just dropped off, we had been keeping pace and expected increases. And it was part of the budget and everything, so.
It's the hard part without a statutory. You don't see it until 6 years later. And it's really the difficulty of it because you really don't. They have basically collection agencies have their guidelines and they try, but people sometimes just don't pay.
Yeah. This is more in line with what we're used to seeing
Yeah, right.
or had been.
Once again, I'd like to thank Jordan and Jennifer
Yeah, Jennifer as well. Yeah.
for finding this and trying to get a resolution for this.
And I appreciate it as well.
I'd like to echo that as well. Been extremely helpful in sorting through this whole financial issue and planning for the future. I'm
Happy to help you guys, whichever need, especially on police and any other city department as well. I mean, if you guys have questions, that's what we're here for. Basically on the resolution, it basically echoes, I think, my analysis paragraph, back and forth. If you see anything that's glaringly different, please let me know.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to, recommend, resolution 2023-04, ambulance account write-offs.
I move to recommend move this forward.
I second. Either one.
Any questions? Roll call.
Steingraber,
Yes.
Keel,
Yes.
Pinker,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thanks, Jordan.
You're not gonna stay for the rest of the entertainment?
No, I'll let that, to the professionals.
You don't know what you're doing.
I'll call you later, let you know what happened.
You start.
Okay, we got a couple sets of bills approved for, first the fire department, chief.
Thank you. Yeah, we have two sets of bills, one signed by Commission President Myers on December 27th of '22, and one signed by Commission Vice President Pinker on January 11th. Pull a few items out, specifically on 9D, there's a large bill in the amount of $22,135 for lighting upgrades at the training center. Basically, all we had at one point was just pretty much a yard light down there, and that was it. As a result, this is part of our capital improvement project to improve the training center. And as a reminder to this body and everybody listening in, is the fire department budget's $25,000 per year in this capital improvement program, and MSTC matches $25,000 annually as well. And again, this is all done to improve the training center. So DC Mueller worked with Merkel Electric to get these upgrades completed, and I can explain in detail exactly what was installed. I'll let him take over from here on that.
As Chief had stated, we do have an agreement with Mid-State Technical College. We had a meeting back in October. We identified certain projects that should be done. The need that was actually identified was extra lighting down there during night training. Typically, all training happens after 6 o'clock just due to the way the system is set up. There's very few trainings that are during the daytime unless the fire department here utilizes that training center. So for Mid-State Technical College, it was essential that we put lighting down there. As Chief had stated, we had one light that was pretty much on our splash tower, which is the rope tower facility down there. What we did is we added extra lighting to all 4 corners of the one training building where we do our fire burns in. And then we also added lighting to the internal parts of the department. We've got 2 containers stacked on top of each other so you can see inside those containers, making it safer. And then we also added another light pole to the far end where we have a roof simulator. So they can do it, it's about 4 foot off the ground. It allows them to cut a hole for ventilation. We put lighting on that so that it actually illuminates that area. Since doing that, we've had a lot of compliments from instructors that are utilizing that after hours, with those compliments basically stating it's just a much safer environment for them. So that's where that came in. And like I said, 11,000 was from Marshfield Fire, and the other 11,000 was from Mid-State Technical College. So that's it in summary.
Yes, before I move on, any questions on that?
It's nice to have that partnership with Mid-State.
It is. On page 9E too, I'll pull out, you'll notice that we purchased 5 quad gas meters in the amount of $5,145.35. And this pretty much, almost all of it, I believe, came out of hazmat grants. Our quad gas meters were quite old, they need replacement, so that's why we got 5 of those. But other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and if you have anything else out, or if you have to answer any questions on that, ask for your approval.
Need a motion to approve.
Move to approve the
Motion by Bill, second by Andy. Are there any questions?
I do have a question. I'm curious to know why you're buying batteries from Kenwood.
Okay, yeah, so we kept, when we switched over to our new Motorola radios, we kept our Kenwoods. Basically, Motorola did not want those. So we kept our Kenwood batteries, or our radios, and use those in-house around the fire station.
Went right over the top, didn't it?
What'd I miss? Yeah, Kenneth Wood supplies those. We used to call him Kenneth, that's why.
I get you out of the station once in a while.
It's too early in the morning. I have a full cup of
And you know,
coffee.
Ken isn't doing very well. I don't think he's selling batteries.
He's got a whole bunch of batteries.
You know him really well, you call him Kenny.
We're not on that first name basis. I still call him Mr. Wood.
Any other questions on the bills for the fire department? We have a motion and a second, roll call please.
Steingrenber. Keel.
Yes.
Hanker.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes. Thank you, chief.
You're welcome.
Police department bills. Chief Joy.
Now that we're all warmed up.
You had your cup of coffee for your question?
Yeah, just wait.
All right.
So, I think you've actually got 3 packets, in front of you today, because of 2023 cutoff, but, the first one was signed by Commissioner Myers on, December 28th, and the other 2 were signed yesterday by Commissioner Steingraber. I also wanna point out that on page 10B, we also bought batteries, to the tune of $737. This was for our drones. We had some malfunctioning drone batteries, and I'm told by drone guys that it's not a great thing if they run out when they're in the air. So we thought it was best to replace them. We actually bought those pretty early in the year, and I don't know why we didn't get the bill until December, but I'm not complaining about that. That was on page 10B. Then on page 10D, I want to point out that actually Travis was intricate in this project. We updated our range. The backstops from the that we used to have were shot up, and they really didn't look very good at all. So they were taken down, and then we were able to work with City Garage to get a cement slab poured out there. And the school actually poured the cement, but City Garage also brought material, helped bring material up. The school construction class did the concrete work and then put up some really cool backstops for us, or target holders for us. It really made the place look really good, and they did it for cost. So we were really proud of how that project shaped up, and hopefully the plows won't hit it when they plow down there. But, so we did that project. With that, I guess I'm happy to answer any questions and ask for your approval.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Andy, second.
So moved.
Steven, are there any questions? Roll call, please.
Steingrenber.
Yes.
Keel.
Yes.
Hanker.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes. Thank you, chief. Fire department activities. Again, chief.
Sure. On page 11B, on December 15th, we hosted Leadership Marshfield Group for Public Safety Day. It's always a fun and informative day. We're always happy to have them here. On page 11C, you'll notice all 3 shifts had a potluck lunch. Took a little time out of the day to celebrate the holidays together. This is the 4th time we've done this, our 4th annual, I guess we call it the Ugly Christmas Sweater Party. Intend to keep this tradition going. It gives us some time to, at the end of the year, to just take a day and reflect and be together for a little while as emergency calls allow. So again, we intend to keep that going. You'll also find several thank you letters and holiday cards in the packet. And then happy to announce that finally, for the first time in all of 2022, we ran fewer calls during the month of December than we did in 2021. That's, I can kind of counter that by saying December was the 5th busiest month that we had in 2022, so it's hard to believe 2021. There'll be more detail in the annual report, in a few months, but overall, 2022, we did respond to 4,082 incidents as compared to 3,534 in 2021. That does not include 200 engine assists to help out the ambulance in those call runs. So really, we're close to 4,300 calls. That's a 16% increase in call volume since last year, and that was the first time in the history of this department's running in excess of 4,000 calls. That just speaks to why we need more people in the referendum. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and ask that you place this report on file.
I'm curious, because we have a number of car seat installations listed. How many car seats do we do each year?
We don't really track it, but I would say on average, we probably do at least, I'd say on average, 5 or 6 a month.
Okay.
Some months are busier than others. We do partner with Marshfield Clinic. They will actually hold car seat clinics here, and I think that's, prior to COVID, it was every month we do it. Once a quarter or once every 2 months.
And then down 11E, on the very last item, 19. Steve participated in a mass casualty tabletop exercise. What sort of support materials are available in the area at a mass casualty? And in that, I include traffic control materials. Because I know Marathon County's got, I believe it's 2 trailers that they can put in.
So this drill, Wood County, we had several partners there, including the Wood County coroner. I think that was more the focus of this one was if we had a large incident with a lot of fatalities, how would each entity respond? I represented our EMS, obviously. Wisconsin Rapids Fire also had a representative there. So that was more in that tabletop. One of the things identified though was partnerships, and I don't know off the top of my head, but you kind of spoke to it. Items that we currently do not have in Wood County, we would reach out to Marathon County for. Like I said, they do have some of those resources. So it is, just as in the fire service, mutually is very prevalent. We're going to be reaching out to our partners for things that we need.
And the other point I'd like to make is on 11G. I think Alderman O'Reilly referenced this in part Tuesday night. Looking at the number of intercepts, we do a lot of those.
Yes.
I haven't totaled these up, but it's a large number.
I think on average, what was it, 140-ish is on the paths, 125. And again, those are guaranteed payment. Those are not affected by Medicare and Medicaid adjustments. That's a straight payment from the Marshfield Medical Center. So.
And that final number will be in the annual report.
Just doing a quick calculation. 9, 10, 16. That's 266 on the intercept chart.
Maybe it was 2 and a quarter. I don't quite remember, but yeah. I know we were right on pace. We had done some calculations back in like August or September. And I looked at just kind of how we were tracking with intercepts and interfacility transfers, and the transfers were down, but the intercepts were right on pace with what we usually do.
Another thing that came up in the discussion the other night by that same alderman was the fact that we also have mutual aid, where it was more for the fire end of it, I think, but that is a factor. And of course, I've always been interested in mutual aid. We end up going to Stratford and Spencer quite often for ambulance because they can't get a crew to turn out. That's all of these figures as well, and probably part of the increase in calls.
Yeah, we do. We've always mutual aid, and that'll come out in the annual report. We track how many we do of those as well. But mainly our mutual aid is for ambulances, generally to Spencer or Stratford, because Spencer, I believe, has 2 ambulances, Stratford only has 1. So if they get 2 calls consecutively, we're up. So, yeah, that'll come on the annual report as well. But like Alderman O'Reilly said, that this speaks to how we are on an island. There isn't a whole lot around us. We have to pretty much take care of ourselves and our surrounding communities, because you've got 3 ambulances between Spencer and Stratford, and I believe Pittsville has 2 ambulances, but that's quite a ways to the south. Which is why we need to be able to staff our ambulances, our 5 ambulances that we have here. And, that was also mentioned at the meeting is, you know, we had 4 ambulances all, no, we've had all 5 of them, multiple occasions this year, so, yeah, it's important
So does it work the other way? I mean, I know we get called a lot to Spencer and Stratford, but are we able to utilize them as well as we need more?
Yes, and we will do that. It probably doesn't happen. We probably reciprocate more mutual aid to them than we get back here. If we catch a major fire, they're on our box alarm system. So when we call the box alarm, Spencer automatically gets alerted that, hey, we're on a fire and we need you to respond to 911s until we get people called back into the station. But yeah, I'd say we reciprocate more to them than they do back to us. But it still works. It's a good system.
Any other questions on the fire reports? We will receive those and place them on file. Thank you. Discussion on engine specifications for engine 4.
Yeah. Moving on to so engine 4 is due for replacement in 2026. Typically every year I'll call around to Apparatus Manufacturers and make sure our CIP line items are, as far as dollar amounts are in line, especially lately with the market being so volatile. So when I made my calls in December for our Quint to be replaced, we had $1.4 million and change in there for 2026 in the CIP to replace that. What I wasn't expecting to hear was, oh, by the way, we're booking out about 38 months for a Quint replacement. I called around to other manufacturers and I got the range of about 32 to 38 months for a Quint. For a straight engine, we're looking at anywhere from, I believe it was 24 to 36 months for an engine, or maybe it's 30 to 36 months for an engine. Part of this whole process of replacing engine 4, and this has been talked about on the floor in officer meetings, you know, during our operations committee level discussions, is how do we want to replace engine 4? There's been a lot of talk and a lot of favoritism toward replacing our Quint with a straight engine. We value the water, larger water on board an engine versus the aerial device. We currently have technically three aerial devices for our city. We have a Rosenbauer 101-foot aerial. We have a Smeal Quint, which is a 75-foot ladder on top of that. And again, our 2001 Pierce Skyboom, which is due for replacement in 2026. That is the 65-foot ladder on top of that. We have 2 engines right now, a 2020 Pierce Impel, and then a 2008 Darley Challenger. And as you all know, engine 2 right now is out for about,
Should be another couple of months.
And that's already been out a month or so. So we're down to 1 straight engine right now. So I guess the thought is right now, since we do value that onboard water, especially with staffing that we have, so if we're responding to a fire with an ambulance out, you know, we're down to 6 personnel responding on that first initial response. There's just too much to do with 6 people to hook into a water source if one isn't available on the way in. So that onboard water becomes very important, 1,000 gallons on the initial attack until we can get reinforcements coming in and secure a water source or a hydrant. So amongst all these talks, we did meet again as operations committee level to discuss this, knowing that we have to put a spec committee together as soon as possible so we can get an engine on order for 2026. And coming out of that operations committee level, it was decided that we should replace our 2001 Quint with an engine. I talked a lot about the water supply and the staffing and why we need that water initially. There are also non-hydrant areas in the city still, especially on the west side of the railroad tracks out by, off of McMillan. That's one area. Also up on North Veterans Parkway, we have some non-hydrant areas there. So again, that just speaks to the need for water, onboard water, until we can establish relay pumping or a different source. One of the other advantages is you know, with an engine, when we have a situation like we have right now, we have our one engine that's out for at least 2 months. It's already been out a month and a half. This would give us another reserve engine to move up into the front line. I think I state in this document, you know, we're one breakdown away on engine 3 from having 0 straight engines in-house, which then we would be responding with 2 Quints. Our 2001 Pierce has a 400-gallon tank. Our other Quint has a 500-gallon tank. So we have half the amount of water that we normally have. Lastly, I mean, you start talking about cost too. You know, we're upfront costs of a Quint in 2026, and I was warned on the phone that this is hard to gauge because the market is so volatile. But we'd be looking at $1.4 to $1.6 million in 2026 to replace our Quint, whereas an engine would range from 800 to $1 million. I guess looking to the future, you know, we do see value in a Quint and having that initial or that second aerial device in-house. So when we go to replace our engine 1, we would replace that with a Quint. The whole reasoning is to kind of flip-flop the way our apparatus are staffed with. Right now we have 3 aerial devices, 2 straight engines. We'd like to flip that to 3 engines and 2 aerial devices within the city. So I guess based on all that, and all this information and discussions in-house, and I guess I'm looking for recommendation to, you know, based on the 3-year lead times as well, to put together a spec committee for engine 4's replacement in 2026, and that we spec out an engine to replace that Quint.
Any questions?
Are you concerned, I guess, with, as far as only having 2 aerials in the big commercial areas we have? Do we have adequate aerials for that kind of a nightmare fire if there's only 2?
We do, and if you look at our downtown fire, for instance, we had several aerial devices up. We had our platform up, we had one of our Quints up, but those types of fires we're calling in for mutual aid. So you're talking defensive attack versus offensive attack. Defensive attack is going to take a little bit of time to set up. There's an old saying that when the 6 go up, the building's coming down. And that's not necessarily true, but that's what the saying is. You're going defensive, you've got all the people out of that building. You're basically trying to save property on either side of that while trying to extinguish the fire. Versus offensive, with that engine, we're making an aggressive attack, we need that water. It's more important to have that water initially. Again, we can call in mutual aid. Spencer has a Quint. Thinking around, Vesper has a aerial device. McMillan has a Quint as well, so we've got those resources available for us for mutual aid for those defensive attacks.
Any other questions?
Just a comment. Some years ago now, when we had the consultant here from 12 clarinets or whatever that,
I beautiful.
yeah.
I like the 12
Walked into the bays and he stood there and he looked and he said, "Oh, they don't need quints, they need water." Kind of confirming the position you've come to, I think.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. We have enough. 2 is plenty as far as aerial devices for our city.
And I think point was made at some plan commission meetings when proposals were put in for development up by Man Road. The lack of water supply up there, and I believe the developer was putting in was that a full pond or a retention pond?
Yeah, he was gonna put in,
Was that 80,000 gallons?
ooh, you're testing my memory. I don't think it was quite that much. It doesn't seem to me.
I know it was upper five figures.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, maybe it was that large, but yeah, he was gonna put the dry hydrant in
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Just another comment. This is about lead time. I went back through 8 consecutive issues of Firehouse magazine. And every month they've got a section on new deliveries. Now, I don't know whether they're put in by the manufacturers or whether they're put in by the departments. But going back through those 8 editions, there were 11 manufacturers that were listed. I think it was last year, I gave you a list of apparatus manufacturers. That's pretty close to 18 to 20 major manufacturers in the country. If the pattern is true, whether it's a large manufacturer or a small, these lead times are getting, I don't see how these people are able to produce and supply. So the sooner we get this done, the better off we're going to be. Now, when we get our specs done and we solicit bids, are we sending requests for bids directly to the companies, or are we sending those to their sales agents?
I'd have to think of how that goes. I mean, generally, we make contact with the sales agents, different manufacturers, and we try to do tours of different places. I'm trying to remember back at the process, Commissioner Pinker. I know they go to.
I can speak to the EMS side, I think is
Yeah,
the same.
I'm trying to think.
Each manufacturer has a representative for an area, so essentially when an EMS is looking for ambulances, I'll be working with the salespersons for those ambulances.
I would like to see requests for bids sent out to as many as possible. I recognize in that list of 20, some of those folks are regional. There's one that pops up periodically. It's called Four Guys. They're out of Pennsylvania, and they are pretty much a regional outfit. Toyne is down in Iowa. I think they are somewhat regional, but we've got Darley, Aaron's Fox, Marion here in Wisconsin. There's Midwest Fire. I think Spencer's down in Iowa. And then we've got the Rev Group, which is KME, Ferrara, Ladder Tower, Smeal, and Spartan. I'd like to see bids sent out to as many of these companies as possible so that perhaps we can get somebody that's got a shorter lead time. And the other thing, this is about specs. We're gonna do our specifications. I firmly believe they've got to be our own specifications. I am greatly opposed to anybody saying, well, we'll take some specs from here, we'll take some specs from there, we'll put this together. I wanna see our people spec out what they want specifically. And I really don't wanna hear any whispers that, oh, well, we've taken this from Harrison, we've taken this from something. That starts to look to be manufacturer-centric, and I don't like that.
I can speak a little bit to that. We did write our own specs for, I think it was engine one, was it not? And, just so you know, we still, I believe it was, American LaFrance came back and said, these are proprietary, and we completely wrote our own.
We tried to go through, I mean, you're gonna take certain pieces of language because honestly, when it comes to writing a spec, there's a lot of things that they wanna know the exact caliper that you're gonna use on the brake. And that all has to be in that spec, and a lot of that is above me and above most representatives here at the Marshfield Fire Department. If we could get somebody that would be able to help us work through that, I think that would be a great help. But that's always been a difficult part, is trying to spec out every single little piece in that specification. And that goes, there's a lot of moving little pieces in that vehicle. And that's, we did it, we tried to take one and tried to make it exactly ours, and when we did engine one spec, and we still got back that information saying that this is proprietary language.
The spec process also accounts for that though. Whether you're talking fire truck, ambulance, doesn't matter, when we put specs out there, request for bids, it says right in the cover letter that any exceptions should be noted and why. So even if we put it for a spec for a specific brand of electronics, and a manufacturer says, well, we don't carry that brand, but we carry this brand, they can still submit specs and justify why they're gonna change it. So the process does allow for that.
Right, and there are just some that we've had come back, and Seagrave, I think, is one too, that they've gotten letters back that just say this is proprietary language. The only, in fact, I think we were told even for engine 3 that the only way we're gonna bid on this is if you come in with us and spec it all with us. So
That's basically saying,
because they believe everything.
we'll sell to you if you play our game.
Right, and so you'll get that, and maybe they're busy enough where they don't want to sell just one engine. I know there's a lot of departments, a lot of larger departments that order, you know, I know Seagrave was supplying FDNY there for a while with, you know, they would order 30 or 40 engines at a time or whatever. I don't know if they're busy enough and that's kind of their outlook or what, but you'll run into some of that with some of these companies for sure, even if we write our own completely from top to bottom using plain language. We've already experienced that. So.
Or you get a bid that's got 90 exceptions to it.
Right.
You know,
We'll go through.
we don't handle
We've
it.
done that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
We'll go through each exception. Not an issue.
I think even with engine 3, even with the 2 specs that we did get back, we went through, it took us multiple days to go through. We go through line by line what we get back based on our spec and what the manufacturer gave. And well, one person reading, you know, however many bids we have, the other people are looking at each spec and to see if there are any differences in those. And I think that one manufacturer had 90 plus exceptions in there, or differences without listing as a second exception. So we go through these very thoroughly to make sure we're getting what we want.
Okay, I need a motion to begin the process for putting a committee together and to replace engine 4.
So moved.
Second.
By Steven, second.
Second.
Bill. As long as it has a pump with a, that can pump 50,000 gallons per minute.
Well, we'll do our best. I have a feeling there's gonna be some exceptions there.
Pull out a water main or two, maybe. Are there any questions on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you.
Keep us up to date as that goes on. Police department here yet? Yeah. Police department activities, training. Oh, I'm sorry.
Not my turn yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw you out of the corner of my eye. so-
Surprised you're out from your nap. You usually take
Thank you, noticed.
You're in the batter's box. Approval of contracts for Fire Recovery USA.
You bet. That's gonna be kind of my purview here. If you remember right, we looked back at last year, we did the, fire billing. This would be a component of the fire billing. This was actually looking at just the inspection portion of the billing. All the other fire billing is still gonna go through LifeQuest. This was Fire Recovery USA, which complements well with Streamline. Streamline is our inspection program. It's an inspection program that's a GPS based, where we go out and basically can kind of follow through. This program, Fire Recovery USA is actually the parent company to Streamline, and they do all the billing on the backside. To say that it's a streamlined process, I would say it's very streamlined. It actually is, what they're able to do is very little interaction from the fire department here and very little interaction from finance, other than to overlook the accounts and make sure everything's flowing the way it's supposed to, and they've got a good backside on that. This was a long, intensive process to try to get this taken care of. This went back to Harold Wolfgram, our attorney. He looked over the contract, found a bunch of changes that were needed. We sent that back to Fire Recovery USA. They were able to make those changes. Finance also had a set of changes that they wanted to see, and Fire Recovery USA was good to make those changes, and we were able to come to a contract. The memo that I put together would be in 13A of your packet, and then the actual service agreement is in 13B of the contract. If you'd like to look over that entire contract, it's in there. What we're asking for today is approval of that contract, to move forward with it, to take it to finance, budget, and personnel, and then on to common council, and finally secure the contract with Fire Recovery USA.
Move to approve the contract.
Motion by Pinker, second by Andy. Any questions?
I just have a comment. Let's commend DC Mueller for working on this. This was about a month and a half process. It took all the back and forth for him, so it was a lot of work, but finally at the finish line.
Good job.
Now, I started reading at about 9, and it was, 10:40 when I finished?
It didn't take too long.
Fall asleep in between.
A while.
Yeah, when that happens. No other questions, we need a roll call vote, please.
Steingraber,
Yes.
Keel,
Yes.
Pinker,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes. Chief, you got some activities you wanna report on?
You want us to take it?
Well, actually, I need to remind the commission that it is strategic to have the fire department go first. So.
Rough edges off.
So you do have a list of our activities that we had this month in your packet. A couple of things I'd like to highlight. On December 2nd, we participated in the LEO, the Learn and Empower program. It's really easy to say. But this is a fairly new program that we got involved with. It involves some of our younger offenders. It's a process that is kind of based similar to what drug court is, a science-based approach to try to get younger folks to make better decisions and to lead them through that. So really excited to see how this project is going to grow, and Derek Iverson is kind of the head of this one. He's doing a really good job. He's our community officer. That was on the 2nd, and then on the 13th, we participated in an active shooter drill up at the clinic. We've been doing a number of these, and it's great that the community is reaching out to us for help, and And we hope that they never learn the skills that we go through, but, I think planning is really the key to surviving these instances, so we were happy to be involved in that. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I just ask that these be placed on file.
Any questions of the police department? Thank you. We'll receive those and place them on file.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, just one more thing.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't actually apply to this, set of activities. But Chief, could you, write a congratulations for election to Sheriff Billup on the part of the Department of Commission?
Absolutely. Be happy to do that.
It's very deserving.
He is. Yeah, I've known, Sheriff Bill for a number of years. He's always been just, very approachable and easy to work with. So I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Can we talk about, are we to the point where we can talk about these reports?
Go ahead.
I'll do my best.
I expect better than that.
I don't blame you. You deserve better.
You know, some of them you just can't pass. I mean, if I look at the annual, the one that goes from January through December, there's some really big numbers in here, but what struck me, I guess, as I was looking at some of it.
What page are you looking at, Andy?
Well, I'm looking at 14F and 14G.
Okay.
Help me understand the columns. Clearance, for example, what does clearance mean?
That's after we've solved and moved the case on. That could be, open pending would still be a clearance, right? I don't think that would be reported as clearance.
Clearances
That's gonna be,
closed or filed for charges.
yeah, either we close it out or file for charges.
Some categories seem to have a much higher clearance rate than others, and I'm curious about that.
Is it the different crimes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so some crimes are solved at a more frequent basis than others. So we're able to reach a conclusion, say we might have one burglary that we're able to solve right away, which would add a clearance. But then we could have a series of burglaries that we're not able to solve as fast because there's more work involved in it. We're not able to solve it all.
Drug arrests or drug category, it seems like there are certainly a lot of them. But the clearance rates seem to be higher than they are in some other categories. How does that work, the drug?
Well, I'm assuming that that's gonna be when we make the arrest and we're able to actually prosecute and clear those cases. So it just, we have more frequent occurrences of those, and so the clearance rate is high. And I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
Well, it sort of does.
The drug arrests, a lot of times that you're seeing numbers on are from, those are patrol level arrests to a lot of the degree, so they don't require a lot of additional investigation, whereas some of your other crimes might require that additional investigation, like burglaries, like we were talking about before. But all of those drug arrests listed, those can be coming straight from traffic stops that are kind of an open and shut case of possession or possession with intent to deliver.
Okay. You have talked about, the department has talked about what I think of its rate of solving cases that are reported to the FBI, required to be reported, as being very high. Of all of these categories of crime, looking at this data, which ones are the ones you would like to improve?
Well, we have a different type of reporting than we have had in the past. Now we have this, I believe it's IBR is the name of it. And that looks at data a little bit differently than our previous method did. So our clearance rate actually has gone down slightly because of that data, because of things like retail theft or simple theft, things that are very difficult to solve because there's no suspects, there may not be evidence, and those sorts of things. So the clearance rate has actually gone down a little bit. The areas in which I would like to improve actually is probably drugs. I mean, drugs has an impact on our community that's probably linked to a lot of other crimes that we're not able to solve. And even though our clearance rate is pretty high in those areas, I think there's still a lot more that we can do and a lot more that we can find. So the clearance rate is really representing what we've found. It's not representing what we haven't found. And I think that we can always improve in those areas.
Okay. I think the numbers, some of these numbers are very surprising. They're higher than I would have.
The scary thing when you look at substance abuse, though, is that many of those other crimes are tied directly to people who are using substances. So if we can focus on that, I think that's the key to lowering the entire crime rate.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Are we picking up any patterns in the drug arrests?
More for the types of drugs used.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of fentanyl, or more fentanyl, I would say now. That is pretty prevalent. Those are the scariest ones, I think.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Heroin seems to be dropping slightly, which is a good sign. Problem is that it's being replaced with fentanyl, which is worse.
Then this is on page 14G, weapons law violations. What are we picking up on those?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Weapons law violations.
Oh,
Knives, guns, clubs, what?
A lot of those all of those would fall under the concealed carry law.
Okay.
So, you know, if I'm not sure that we were differentiating which weapon we're getting, but all of those would be violations of that law. It could be electronic weapons to a firearm.
Okay. Then down on the bottom of that page, right above animal cruelty, you've got pornography. Two questions, hard copy or online? The second question, how many of these get referred to the feds?
Well, I know that a lot of the reporting on these is backdated quite a bit. So these I believe that these would cover all of our mostly going to be computer related pornography at this point. In my opinion, that this number is probably not accurate to what we're seeing or working on. This may be a clearance rate, but there's a lot of other ones that are out there. But because of the lag in reporting and how these crimes are investigated, it takes a while for it to come on the paper.
But would we refer certain types of these to federal agencies directly, or would that come out of the county?
We work actually with Marathon County's got an
With their
excellent
center,
program.
yeah. Okay. Do you know how many people they've gotten in that unit?
I don't, but our in-house expert, I'll call him an expert because he absolutely is, Jason Parks, works diligently on these, and
Okay.
he's now working within our department to get some more people involved.
Thank you.
I'm glad there's some questions on that because it's very useful information that you provide. That's appreciated. So it's been a good addition to our packets every month.
And actually, I'm glad too, and Commissioner Steingraber's idea to add it. And I think that it's something that I need to better understand as well, and so I can get your answer to you.
We'll have to keep track of it. It's very helpful to plan for planning and stuff too, for what direction you want it. Like when you pick a Friday night and all the traffic people go out and stop everybody on North Central Avenue, that's target areas and target
Sometimes we're on Oak and Peach.
Don't go down on watch.
We got a report of a slow moving red car out there.
We led the, rage incident. Oh, what we do for fun. The next item is approval of the request to restructure the police department. You have some ideas?
It sounds bigger than it is. So in your packet, I did, include a memo, which I hope describes what my intention is here. And really, I feel that there's a slight imbalance in how, our staff services supervisor is positioned in our organizational chart. Our staff services person now, deals with day-to-day operations similar to what a lieutenant would on the law enforcement side. I feel that more appropriately, she should report to the assistant chief rather than the chief, who, my vision is to have more of a 1,000-foot high view of where we're going and not the day-to-day. I think that the assistant chief could better address the needs and have a better thumb on the pulse of what's happening on the law enforcement side that can help guide the civilian side of the department. So I would just ask to move one position to the assistant chief, and it appears as though it won't affect the span of control greatly, and would still be in an operating area with that. So I would just ask approval to restructure that position in our department.
I will entertain a motion to that effect.
Could I ask a question before we do that?
Okay.
Is this a chief's management decision, and does it need to come to us for approval?
In my estimation, I think that it's part of our oversight of the department to be involved with the structure of the department.
Okay.
It could be a chief's decision, but I think in the interest of keeping us informed and to be part of the decision, which is part of the management of the department that we have an oversight on, that we become involved. Good question, though. I think that's just how I feel.
My thought was I think I would feel as though I'm overstepping my bounds if I change the structure of our department without your input.
That's fine. I'll make the motion to approve his proposal.
Second.
Motion by Andy, second by Steven. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Steingraber,
Yes.
Keel,
Yes.
Inker,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes. Man, I thought we were done with this public safety referendum.
What referendum is that?
What you're talking about? Something everybody's been talking about. You're on the backside of the.
Oh.
You got some, updates?
Well, I guess, knowing that council will be moving forward with 9,
Backside of the.
yeah, no worries. 9 firefighters, 1 officer, record specialist, and admin would be split. I think we put it on here just to see what council's decision was, to see if there was any additional conversation that wanted to be discussed here as far as,
Sounds like
listening
council
sessions
was real supportive of having someone help us through this process too, which was good.
Yeah, marketing. And I do have 2 documents in front of you that, we did give to council as well. I might as well go there first, maybe. We just produced these probably this week. I guess we were asked on different levels, both from the public and from different council members and others that, why 9, why not 6, why not 3? And, we had done the comparisons with, NFPA 1710 standards and all that, and that certainly justifies the 9, but, we're still kind of getting the questions as to why 9. So I don't think this ratio exists out in any standard or anything like that, but we started looking around at different communities and what do they have for firefighters per call volume. So we started figuring that out. And that's what the smaller chart that you guys have in front of you kind of points out, is I did a little looking around. I took a larger department, a smaller department, and then tried to see if both the same size as us. Oakler being the larger department, they're at about 101 calls per person. They were successful in getting 60 referendum in 2022. Point is at around 91.2. Merrill, which is the smaller community I looked at, they're around 85.9. You can kind of go through those numbers in yellow at the top of that graph. It all averages out to about 93.2 calls per member, if you break it down that way. Right now, with the way we are staffed, we're at 113.3 calls per member. With 6 personnel, if I put this together before council made their decision on Tuesday, but if we would have went for 6 per member, that would have put us at 97.1 calls per person. And with the 9, it puts us down to 90.6. So it puts us in the ballpark of that 93.2. And once again, looking at the future, we don't want to have to go back to the public for another referendum. So as calls keep increasing, this ratio will keep growing. So I feel the 90.6 justifies the 9 personnel, that in a few years we'll probably be up to 93.2, right around that average. So.
Pete, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry. No. One good question I think that Alderman O'Reilly had was, what if calls go down? And you're gonna have to help me understand this probably, obviously better than I do, but even if ambulance calls go down, in order for the fire side of the house, you still had to have the same amount of people, right?
Right, so yeah, it's 2 separate things. So, and Wagner, Alderman Wagner was kind of touching on the NFP 1710 side of this. Well, yeah, you'll be at NFP 1710 standards, but that's if no ambulances go out. You're telling us you're busier than ever and there's gonna be ambulances out. Like, yes, but that's not the way they look at that standard. They look at it as, when you are fully staffed, how would you respond?
So the number of firefighters that are on the referendum is gonna staff the fire side of the house.
Correct.
And benefit the medical side of the house.
Correct, yes. We'll be able to run more ambulance calls, it'll reduce overtime, plus we'll have those additional members to fill up the trucks. So we're not responding to a fire with 4 or 3 people, or even 2.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 examples, which I didn't bring in here. I've been asking the ship commanders to keep track of this, but there's been multiple incidents since middle of December-ish. I've got at least 3 on my desk right now where we've been down to 2 people with nobody coming in, just due to rigs being out. And one incident where we were down to 0 in the station, with people coming in, but for a period of time, we had nobody here.
The questions that I get with the 9 firefighters is usually surrounding that. Well, we're only down 3. They equate it to the ambulance side, but really it's the fire side that's causing the most danger.
Correct. Yeah, because if a fire comes in when we've got 2 or 3 people, and it's gonna happen. It's going to happen. The amount of times we are sitting here with 4 or 2 or 3 people is increasing, obviously, with the ambulance. And that's, and especially with the ambulance enterprise fund having the issues it did, I think a lot of the focus is on the EMS side of the house. But yeah, there is that fire side that we need the people for as well.
Helps a lot, thanks.
I would say the comment to the, what are you gonna do if there's less calls? Well, shoot, if you have less ambulance calls, you can do better fire prevention. And help the people help themselves. I'm sure there's things that happen in text, you don't have the time to think of it.
Correct. I think we're dreaming to have less calls anyway. I don't think it's gonna be a problem.
Just saying, I don't think that's gonna be a problem.
Probably not a reality. I think Steve, Administrator Bart, started off the discussion that night by pointing out the fact that the city clerk had looked into it, that we had given them two options of the 9 or the 6 and 3 additional over time. It can't be done that way. So, it basically boiled down to going with 9 and, moving forward with it from this point on. And then somewhere in the discussion, I believe it was Alderman Spiros brought up the fact that, Witzel also brought up that we're really adding 6.
Correct.
But because we're 3 shy right now from what we should have, and so it would be, it's 6 additional. And then as far as the cops too, we're 1 short of the police officer and the administration, secretary. And how do you educate the public that way? Well, that's the challenge between now and April, is to point out the fact that we're really just adding 6. We're getting back what we have, but we were adding 6. And we can do that through education. The public who really wants to know what's going on and what this is all about will see that. And then there was a breakdown as far as cost for $100,000 and $200,000. Those dollar figures were thrown out there too, and really seemed quite acceptable to the people who commented from the city council.
And I broke this down a little bit, sorry, Joey, I broke this down a little bit further. It's $6.53 a month, 22 cents a day, $1.50 a week, on a $100,000 home. So I mean, if you think about it, it's gonna cost about I looked at Starbucks menu the other day, for just a black coffee, it's $3. So I mean, you're looking at about a cup of coffee every 2 weeks at Starbucks, is what you can break it down to and equate it to.
Well, looking at this $200,000 figure, the max figure that's listed in the chart.
Yep.
$13 a month to your mortgage. Like, because that's where everybody's taxes go through anyway. I mean, not that we, want that, but that, for what we're doing here,
No,
$13 a month, man.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanna discuss in the forefront of this too is that, we're looking at, like, the record specialist. Even if the referendum doesn't pass, I need to have a record specialist. We can't work with the 2 that we have. So that means I have to cut back on other things that go out to service. And that's what I'm trying to avoid is to fill those positions so that I don't have to go into the budget to hire a record specialist and take out of operating. So that's really the goal that we all are in. We're all trying to avoid sacrificing service that we provide.
And even with this last budget cycle, we started dipping into operating supplies, and I mean, that affects services, right?
And I can't go more than a year. I don't think it's smart to go more than a year with an officer short too. We've gotta find something. I gotta find a reason, a way.
I was very pleased to hear that they were supportive of getting somebody to walk us through this, to a professional. And, that was a high point of that meeting. And they were seemed to be all pretty much in agreement with that.
It was a great presentation again, thank you, and also very lively and wonderful discussions. I do agree. I'm very happy to see that we're making the effort and coming together. It felt really good as the meeting went along, so thank you again. And we're gonna support it as much as we can. I would just say, and part of your selling point, the insurance rates going down for all, that's a huge thing, because obviously it does go up every time we turn around, so yeah. And again, more calls, just let them know. And this is not just Marshall, this is everywhere, as you had stated, so yeah. And that's what I'm gonna focus on as my selling point. How's that? Anything else? And do not hesitate to jump out and say, what else do you need, okay?
Sounds good. Yeah.
On behalf of the commission, I did address this during part of the meeting that we're looking forward to working with and continuing to work with the council. And making this a joint effort, and everybody's part of teaming up together to get a positive outcome in April when that referendum comes, so.
Just one last thing I'd like to add, we plan on having, several listening sessions, I don't know how many yet, and I don't know where and when just yet, but plan is to get out there during the evening, and just get the information out there as to why. I know we can't, tell people to support this or not support it or anything like that, but we can at least provide the information. I think the information is what's gonna be the key, for this. We do plan on having listening sessions, town hall meetings, whatever you wanna call them. I'll keep you up to date on that too.
Absolutely, because you're the source of the information, both of you, so, I mean, that's important. Any other discussion on that? Okay. Items for future meetings, I'd like to admit that I'm neglecting the duties and roles and mission statement of the commission. Again, we'll try to schedule something for a special meeting just to discuss that. So not for any particular reason, but it pops up in my head that I gotta get this done. It's been a few months, but we've been through a little bit in the last few months to sidetrack it, so it's important enough that we spend some time on it, and I think we'll put some feelers out for when we can have a special meeting sometime in the very near future and get that taken care of. So that you know this isn't the first time that happened, doing some history stuff. And a commissioner back in 78, I think it was, maybe 84, one of those, addressed the same thing. It's probably where we came up with the piece of paper that we're looking at now, that we wanna tweak a little bit. So it'll be good for the departments to know, what we feel our particular duties are, and it'd be good for, bringing on new people to the commission and to, know what duties each of us have in our roles on the commission. So it's a useful tool, but I just gotta get it done, so. Any other items for maybe next month? Very good meeting. Appreciate everybody being here. Seeing no objections, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.